Good day and welcome to Gold Insight Russia, where we talk about what's going on in the world's second largest gold producer. My name is Rod Mackenzie and I've been providing news, information and analysis on the precious metal sector in Russia for over 25 years to major banks, financial institutions, information providers, etc., including Deutsche Bank, Credit Agricole, Standard Bank, Woodmac and Metals Focus. Now today I want to talk about Russia's pivot to gold and how ditching US treasuries and buying more gold for its reserves turned out to be a very lucrative move. Now back in 2014, in response to the first sanctions imposed on Russia by the US, the G7 and the EU, which were imposed after the reunification of Crimea with the motherland, the central bank started to reduce dramatically their holding of US Treasury bills and instead invest their reserves into gold. Now since then, the value of Russia's gold reserves has increased by about 40% to a record high of $229 billion. Now this achievement is a testament to the efficacy of the strategy employed, which involved a concerted effort to accumulate the precious metal from 2014 onwards. Now, the price of an ounce of gold has increased from around 1,000 to 1,500 back then to over $3,300 per ounce. Now, according to the Bank of Russia, the value of their gold reserves has increased by 38% to a record 229 billion at the end of March. Now, since the beginning of 2022, the value of Russia's gold reserves has actually gone up by 72% or $96 billion. Notably, the physical volume in the central bank's vaults has remained relatively stable over the past 3 years, maintaining a consistent position at 75 million ounces, and that's indicated by the data that's available, and I collate it myself. Now, Russia's reserves are increasing in value in line with the new record gold price levels. Gold prices hit a new high this week, surpassing 3,270 per ounce amid a weaker dollar and fears of a recession as the US-China trade war intensifies. Now, the Russian central bank began actively acquiring gold back, as I said, in 2014, following the Crimean referendum. Now, between 2014 and 2020, the price of gold, as we know, fluctuated between 1,000 and 1,500 per ounce. During this period, the Russian central bank purchased gold for its reserves on an annual basis. Over that 6 years, a total of 40 million ounces were purchased. Consequently, with the price increased significance, with gold now being almost 3 times as much as a lot of what they bought at the time. Now, between 2014 and 2020, the exchange reserves of gold grew by an average of 200 tonnes per year. However, the growth rate in Russia's gold and foreign exchange reserves did actually slow in response to the onset of the global COVID scam pandemic and the subsequent decline in Russia's budget revenues, and that was coupled with a rise in expenses. The situation was further compounded by the imposition of economic sanctions and a subsequent increase in Russia's budgetary expenditures on the military campaign and the special military operation. However, in monetary terms, the volume of gold in Russia's gold and foreign exchange reserves will continue to grow and has done. In 2024, they were up by 25%, largely due to the revaluation against the backdrop of the increasing prices for gold. Now, up until 2014, Russia's strategy was to diversify its gold and foreign exchange reserves, storing them not only in gold and the US dollar and the euro, but also in other major reserve currencies that were in the Japanese yen, the British pound and the Swiss franc. Now, the majority of those reserves were naturally held mostly in liquid and in demand places for use in foreign trade. They've now learnt that wasn't a very clever idea. Following the freezing of Russian reserves in places like Euroclear in Belgium, the Western countries in 2022, Russia decided logically to refuse to hold assets and currencies in unfriendly countries or their currencies in its reserves. And they stopped storing currency abroad. apart from with China, India, etc. The central bank's reserves of gold are securely stored within Russia, and ensuring it now remains out of reach of the thieving Western politicians. Now, the composition of Russia's reserves has undergone significant changes. Following the global financial crisis of 2008, the share of gold in the country's international reserves went from 2% to 10% by early 2014. The remaining 80-90% was in dollars and euros, but by early 2022, the gold share had increased to 21%, reflecting the substantial shift in the reserve composition. But by 2025, it was past 35%, and that represents a 3.5 times growth over the 11-year period. Concurrently, the central bank initiated a systematic reduction in the share of the dollar and euro, and by 2022, it had completely divested itself from any semblance of those Western currencies. Now, the yuan, the Chinese currency, has seen a substantial increase in its share, and the last time Russia sold its gold was back in the 1990s. At that time, it sold a significant portion of its gold to cover its budget deficit when it all went tits up for Russia and attempt to stabilise the ruble that didn't actually work. However, in the last 2 decades, Russia has actively increased its gold reserves, and I expect that's going to continue. If you like and enjoy this program, please subscribe and set the alert button so you'll get informed when I send you another video. Thanks for watching. Take care.